The expansive garden here that occupies the city block between 18th and 19th, between North and Wallace Streets, is nothing short of an oasis for this neighborhood.
It's a wonderful green space in the midst of a urban environment.
But longtime resident Justino Navarro with the Spring Garden Community Development Corporation says it wasn't always this green and beautiful.
In the 70s, the garden was occupied by houses and high-rises and a post office.
Eventually, he says, many of the buildings became abandoned and fell into disrepair.
This was a vacant lot. There were about 7 shells that remained on site.
And the FBI was brought in to clear the area of the drug trade that had taken hold here.
So here we were left with this huge, over 70,000 square feet, of land, and it was a blight on the community.
But Navarro says in 1995, no one wanted to buy and develop lots in Philadelphia.
You couldn't give lots away because the city, and not only Philadelphia, but the rest of the country and urban centers were very much in decline.
So he says neighbors, including the Spring Garden CDC and the Spring Garden Civic Association, worked together with the city to reclaim this as a garden. Navarro says the goal was not only to improve the quality of life here, but also to bring the community together.
There was a big divide between the eastern end of the neighborhood and the western end of the neighborhood. The western end being defined as west of 20th Street, the eastern end being defined as east of 20th Street. And believe it or not, very rarely does someone who lived west of 20th Street venture down east of 20th Street because it was so dangerous.
This area that became known as the Spring Gardens unified neighbors through the common goal of gardening.
Irrespective of background, income, nationality, profession.
And over the years, Garden Chair Marsha Connolly says they've come a long way.
Some of the projects that have been built over the years are the fence that surrounds the entire garden, the pergola in our northeast corner, our bee colony, our 19th Street sitting area. The raised beds themselves were built by all the gardeners. The pathways, the water system, our orchard, the city harvest area, the compost area.
Certainly didn't look like this back in 1995.
Of course, all those projects cost money, and while members have been able to come up with creative fundraising ideas in the past, David Birch, vice president of the steering committee, says the global coronavirus pandemic has brought all of their effort to a halt.
Last year, the events committee raised $23,000. That came from Cornucopia, our annual fundraising event, and Cornucopia raised $10,000. The rest of the $23,000, the majority of that came from food truck events that we held here in the garden. This year, because of COVID, we cannot do that.
So if you can't raise money like you used to, what happens to the garden?
Well, the garden will go on, but you need to move into the future.
In the meanwhile, Navarro says they are working to make sure the Spring Gardens remains preserved in its current use.
The Philadelphia Housing Authority has turned over the 7 parcels that are owned by PHA to the city of Philadelphia, to Parks and Recreation specifically, because the garden will become a Parks and Recreation garden protected under the Open Lands Preservation Ordinance.
I think the best part about it is we've been able to increase the membership. This garden had only 40 gardeners in it originally. So being able to open it up to more community members, and we've done that by creating a smaller plot. So now we have 200 plots in here with over 350 people.
And Birch adds what people might not know is that they do a lot of charity work through City Harvest.
Last year, we gave 2,000 pounds of vegetables to several organizations like Share, the Sunday Breakfast Mission.
While community members brainstorm how to raise money for new projects, they also continue to think about all the projects they'd still like to complete, either during or after this coronavirus pandemic.
There are further plans to develop a storage shed, a pavilion, a senior sitting area. All those are plans that are being developed now to further develop the garden and continue to make it a permanent presence in the city of Philadelphia.
More information about the Spring Gardens Community Garden can be found online at thespringgardens.org.